Hello everyone, Stakuyi here, and welcome to another video. Before we begin, I have a little bit of an announcement to make, and that is that I have actually gone ahead and launched merch. Now I can't post the link yet on my TikTok bio because, well, I have sponsored content currently on there. That will go off tomorrow. I will be posting it in the description down below. Let me know what it is that you think. I have designed two different kinds of things. The first is artwork that I actually did not create. That was the first fan art that has ever actually been sent in for me. And the lady that made this, she did not want me to compensate her, but I don't think that that's right. So we reached a compromise. She actually works for an animal shelter for a dog rescue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a percentage of the sales of whatever it is that gets made from any of these designs that use her artwork, and these are going to go towards the animal shelter that she helps run. The second thing is that I've started to design some shirts, and please let me know what you think. If there's any kind of designs, anything that's missing, anything that you want to see, just put it in the comments below, let me know, message me on Instagram, etc. Just let me know what it is that you think. And on this note, let's go ahead and begin today's video. So, what we're going to talk about today is Viking Berserkers. Yes, I know, Berserkers. Just about everyone's favorite thing to do with Vikings, and Vikings are just about everyone's favorite topic once you probably go past Rome, or even before Rome. It really depends on the person, because everyone fanboys over something, whether it's Romans, Vikings, samurai, etc. But anyway, Berserkers. Did they exist? Yes. Yes, they absolutely existed. Were they like what we think of them today? No, absolutely not. See, there's a big flaw when it comes to media depictions, whether it is books, movies, video games, etc. When we think of a Viking Berserker. If you thought of a Viking Berserker right now, you are typically thinking of one of two things. Either you are thinking of a bulky, heavily armed warrior who is crashing into battle, tearing people limb from limb, and just rampaging through it. A unstoppable juggernaut. Or you are thinking of someone that is wearing next to no armor, perhaps is even naked, and is going into battle screaming and raving like a madman, unable to be controlled by anyone because he's entered into a kind of psychotic state. Both of these can share some truth, but at the same time it's not a complete picture. So we need to go ahead and start from the beginning for what is a Berserker. So a Berserker is a classification of warrior called a sacred warrior. And Berserkers of Norse lore are not the only Berserkers. Different ones actually qualify, whether it is Islamic warriors going into a religious fervor in Iran when they were escaping from British forces that had surrounded the cities in a siege. I can't remember the exact name of the battle for it. I'm going to need to go and make a cover on that. But a small group of warriors sung themselves into a religious fervor before escaping. This also applies to the Celts, to different Germanic tribes. This applies to even some Irish warriors. The premise behind a sacred warrior was a warrior that, through an act of religious devotion, whether this was by chanting, singing, dancing, drugs, anything along those lines, would bring themselves into a kind of state that they were no longer human, so to speak. And on that note, I'm going to discuss what the idea of a Berserker and their animalistic-like qualities were. So, the key reason why sacred warriors and Berserkers and that type of classification identified with animals is that this was a concept of self-dehumanization. When someone goes to war, when someone goes to fight, it is very difficult for a person to distance themselves from their own humanity. especially when one is up close in melee combat. So what ancient warriors did as a technique is to forcefully disassociate themselves from being human. This was something that they would take on animal-like qualities, aspects of the wolf, aspects of the bear, of the raven, anything that you could think of that they would disassociate from themselves as humans so that they would not feel human emotions, whether this was fear, whether it was logic, whether it was compassion, anything along those lines, anything that would make them a better warrior, one that was able to fight and kill, feeling no pain, whether emotionally or physically. Both actually apply in this case. So again, this begs the question, what is a berserker? Well, there are two ways that you can interpret it. Either one, it is a shamanistic warrior that through their acts of religious devotion are bringing themselves closer to the gods in an effort to be brought to Valhalla, dying gloriously in combat. They serve a religious purpose on the outskirts of the community, but are seen as dangerous and therefore not be brought in. Or the second interpretation is as elite bodyguards. Now, here's the thing about berserkers. Because the first part is also kind of true, they are not great bodyguards. At least not in extended combat, not for the purpose of actually protecting you. See, the idea behind a berserker was that they served essentially as shock infantry when used by a warlord. The Viking war tactic, as I previously discussed, was a shield wall. It was a static formation that held all men in place, and you bound the weakest in the center so that they could not move. A Norse berserker quite literally would not be able to maintain themselves within a shield wall. So what they typically did is they stayed as a elite retinue of a lord, of a jarl, of a king, of some kind of ruler that they had pledged allegiance to. And the problem with berserkers was that while they could be an amazing force for shock infantry to break a line, by virtue of being so religiously filled with fervor, by virtue of being berserkers, they could not hold a line. And this meant that the very people that they may be trying to protect, they might just abandon in favor of going into battle. And this is actually something that we see a couple times in history. So I will do a few videos on that here. I'm going to be covering some battles here in the future where I can demonstrate that. This is something that can be seen as an example in the Battle of Stiklestad there in 1030, where you have a king with a retinue of berserkers who essentially abandon the phalanx, abandon the shield wall, and go into battle. And this is something that purportedly, per the chroniclers, leads to the king's death. So what this means is that berserkers were a kind of force that could be an invaluable tool to a warlord in an effort to break an enemy's line, but it was also a double-edged sword because they weren't necessarily the easiest or best to control for themselves. Now, I can cover this more in the future. I can look more into different types of berserkers all around the world, combat techniques, everything that they would demonstrate. The unfortunate reality is that much of our understanding of history has been skewed by religious chroniclers that were written hundreds of years after the Vikings existed. And at the same time, these were from Christian sources that demonized them. So what I've covered here in the first parts of the video is showing not the religious madmen that would tear themselves limb from limb and everyone around them and were veritable demons. These were men who, through acts of shamanistic practices, would bring themselves to a state of fervor that they would be able to perform admirably in combat. And that is the idea of a berserker. I hope that explains it a bit. If you have any further questions or anything that you want to know, please do reach out to me here. Anything you want to cover, please put it below. And I do hope you all have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.